dear members of the legal profession in Mexico and abroad. Welcome to this very special session, virtual session, on a very important topic we're going to discuss today, which is the American Bar Association and the challenges of the legal profession in light of COVID-19. And for that effect, we have our guest of honor, Mrs. Judy Martinez, President of the American Bar Association. Judy, welcome and thank you very much for your participation in this session.
Well, thank you, Hector, and I'm delighted to spend this time with you.
Thank you very much, Judy. Just to put in context this virtual session, I'd like to mention that members of the Mexican Bar Association have been very active organizing virtual sessions to address the challenges of the legal profession in light of COVID-19 with a Mexican law perspective. However, it is of our interest of knowing what our colleagues are doing in other countries, and today we will start with the United States of America. It is of our interest to know what our colleagues are doing, and what better speakers on that topic than Judy Perry. So as an introduction, Judy, why don't you give us an overview of the American Bar Association? What association is that? Who are members? A little bit of history, please, Judy.
Of course. The American Bar Association is the largest voluntary professional organization in the world, and it is the voice of the legal profession in the United States. It engages in many activities within its ranks, the lawyers and judges and other legal professionals who engage with the ABA do tremendous amount of its work along with the professional staff we have in offices in Chicago, in Washington, D.C., and in other areas doing critical work for the ABA. The activities of the American Bar Association include the accreditation of law schools through our section of legal ed and admissions to the bar on behalf of the Department of Education for the United States, as well as our activities in the area of ethics. The ABA is the principal contributor and author of the Model Rules of Professional Conduct, which provide guidance and model rules for the 50 state jurisdictions in the United States for their Supreme Courts and regulators in order that they can adapt, modify, or embrace the Model Rules of Professional Conduct in order to regulate the practice of law in their states. There are a host of other activities of the American Bar Association, and I'll be delighted to go into those, Hector. Our critical work in the area of pro bono services and legal aid is of great importance to our members. And so we have a policy-making body of the American Bar Association called our House of Delegates, which is over 600 representatives from across the United States of individuals who are sitting in the House in a representative capacity of either their state or local or specialty bar association or an affiliated organization. And that body reviews and debates and then, as appropriate, adopts policy of the association through a resolution process. And that policy of the association is the basis on which I speak, the ABA lobbies, and the ABA takes other actions and undertakes other activities. And those activities run a spectrum of issues regarding the administration of justice and the rule of law in areas of practice that we want to look at and support our attorneys, members, and our judges as well.
Thank you very much, Judy. So what are the challenges of the legal profession in which the American Bar Association regularly works?
Well, I think, Hector, I should step back a moment and talk to you first about the goals of the American Bar Association so you can understand the challenges as we work toward those goals. The ABA has only 4 goals: serve the profession, improve the legal profession, eliminate bias and increase diversity, and advance the rule of law. And all of our work fits under and works toward the achievement of those goals through our professional staff as well as our volunteer members. So to give you some examples, we work hard to make sure that lawyers increase their competency and really maintain their level of ethics for their clients each and every day. And we do that through a host of programming and publications, as well as interactions with our lawyers that we know are critically important. We also do that by making sure that we keep abreast of issues and challenges that lawyers have within their practice, and do so in a way that affords us input into how we see lawyers working in various scenarios across the legal profession, whether in-house, in private practice, for government agencies, and elsewhere. And what we know is that through our work with regard to promoting the model rules of professional conduct, which is the ethics rules for lawyers across the country, that we set forth and give guidance on and actually promulgate, we then turn them over to the 50 state jurisdictions, to the state Supreme Courts, and to the regulatory bodies in the states to make sure that they have them in order that they can embrace them in full or adopt or modify as they think appropriate for the citizens of their state and the protection of the public and for the regulation of all those who deliver legal services. Our other work includes making sure, certainly in these last several years, that lawyers across the country, our members, understand the opportunities presented by innovations in technology, and in fact, stay competent on those innovations and technologies that are available to them in order that they can do so in the most ethical of ways. We also work hard to make sure that law students are understanding their role as they come into the profession and as they graduate from the more than 200 ABA accredited law schools across the country. And in doing so, we make sure that they understand the importance of the organized bar and getting involved even when they're in law school, to make sure that they know that they have a place and a space where they can pursue the issues of importance to them, and also that they can become their best for the clients they serve, whether in private practice or again in government work, or in fact in corporate in-house practice, and also for those for whom they do pro bono. The challenges we also take on are those that address the public's need for a greater understanding of their role in our democracy and how essential elements of their role, such as exercising their right to vote, registering for their right to vote, is so critical to making sure that our nation is one of laws. And so what we do is spend time really working hard through various programs and projects, one of which is our Law Day, which we have each May 1. And that's been going on since the 1950s, when an ABA president worked with President Eisenhower in order to establish Law Day. And that Law Day every year has a theme. Last year, it was focused on freedom of speech and freedom of press. This year, just 2 weeks ago, it was focused on the 19th Amendment, the right of women, the guarantee of the right of women to vote across our nation. And the theme for this year, is your vote, your voice, our democracy. And so you can see how we utilize the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment as an opportunity to educate the public, not only about what that battle was all about, what the suffragists did in our country to assure women the right to vote, but most importantly, the lessons we learned for them, as well as the struggles that we still see in affording people voting rights and voting access.
Thank you, Judy. How those professional challenges have evolved as consequence of COVID-19 in the United States?
Well, I know like in your country, lawyers across the United States are similarly facing many challenges, Hector, with the pandemic and juggling all their responsibilities at home with elder parents or perhaps children being at home, and also with their practices. And what we have seen as a tremendous transformation of our profession that worked in a model typically that was about one-on-one and in-person contact, and has been forced in a very short period of time to take on new technologies as well as to work remotely or virtually. And so we in the American Bar Association are working hard to assist both our members and lawyers across the country to better understand the tools that are available from a technological standpoint, but also how they can manage and work remotely and at their best, ethically and competently for those for whom they serve. We're also working closely with the courts, as many of them have suspended services and in-person services, but continue to forge on in a way that we never thought possible in their efforts to deliver justice. Those are some of the challenges being faced by the pandemic, but we also need to speak of the challenges being faced by the public. We know already, and we're just starting to see, Hector, what we believe and anticipate is a tidal wave of legal needs that will arise as a result of the pandemic. And so what we did was very early on, when we were facing the first weeks of the COVID-19 pursuit in the United States that was happening in cities and towns at different times across the country, we established an American Bar Association task force on legal needs arising out of the 2020 pandemic. And it has brought together, it has convened extraordinary talent and leadership from both within the Association of the American Bar, as well as other organizations with which we work regularly and collaboratively on a regular basis. So at that table of the task force is the Conference of Chief Justices of the United States. The president of the Conference of Chief Justices from all 50 states is actively engaged at that table. The National Center for State Courts, which is a resource for all the state courts and state courts administrators, the head of the court administrators for the country, their president is at that table. The Legal Services Corporation in our country, its president, Legal Services Corporation, provides a significant amount of the addressing the needs of the unmet legal needs, I should say, of the near and poor in our country. And we also have a number of other organizations at the national level who have come together in order to identify the legal needs arising out of the pandemic, to recommend how the American Bar Association should respond to those needs, and to mobilize pro bono resources like we have never mobilized pro bono resources before, through both our ABA efforts as well as our state and local and affinity bars, our specialty bars across the country. And that task force is doing great work. We also are doing other work to support the profession and the lawyers in need. We have a tremendous amount of resources on our website for not only our members, but also for lawyers in general. Resources that include, to go back to your question about challenges arising out of the pandemic, resources that include resources on wellness for lawyers, on how to get through the anxiety and stresses, the depressions that we know that are being put upon lawyers because of these new challenges, and judges as well, Hector. So there's many resources that we are delivering, and one of the ways that we are delivering them is through webinars such as this one and other means in order to bring people together, because we know, as you know, that community at this time is more important than ever. And we need to make sure that we are providing platforms and ways for our members in their communities that existed through in-person meetings of the American Bar Association to now continue to exist and to thrive in this new world in which we find ourselves.
Thank you very much, Judy. One of the concerns of the legal profession worldwide is the independence of the judiciary. Would you please tell us what is the role of the American Bar Association in the United States regarding that topic, independence of the judiciary?
Well, the independence of the judiciary, Hector, is one of the core focuses of the ABA, as well as the fair administration of justice. There is not a day that often goes by when I am not talking about the judicial independence and its criticality to our democracy and the rule of law. And we work hard to make lawyers understand, but also help the public understand that that third co-equal branch of government and its independence is essential to what we have in our country, what we want to protect in our country, and most importantly, what we need in order to make sure that there are checks and balances and separation of powers as required by our Constitution. And so we know that utilizing opportunities to educate the public is critically important. We do so through our wonderful tool that addresses things of this nature called ABA Legal Fact Check, which covers over 50 topics of importance with no position taken, just a laying out of the law and the jurisprudence, the case law that's relevant to an important topic. And we make that available for the media as well as the public so that they understand not only what's going on in our country and as in the regular course of the country's work and its business of democracy, but also right now how the pandemic is affecting all we do. The work to make sure that we are speaking out as the national voice of the legal profession in support of our judges, to make sure that they are not subject to attacks, to make sure that there is, of course, a right to criticize the merits of a decision in a respectful manner that anyone has, but that should never devolve into personal attacks on judges. That is an issue of critical importance of the American Bar Association, and one obligation that we take very, very seriously as we go about our work each and every day.
Thank you, Judy. Also, another concern of the international legal profession is the freedom of speech and the freedom of press. We have been witnessing in various countries, including Mexico and the United States, some statements of relevant politicians apparently attacking the media or judges or freedom of speech. In that sense, what would be the role of the American Bar Association in the U.S.?
Again, significantly educating the public about why those are freedoms that need to be protected. We just released the survey results from our second annual civic literacy survey. And I can tell you that the results of those surveys that were taken in March, and then our wonderful team also resurveyed in April because they realized that they should look at how things were unfolding during the pandemic as well. What we know is that there was extraordinarily strong support for the freedoms of association and press, for the freedoms of the First Amendment rights of free speech and free press. What we saw, though, was some indication that people understood as they are working through the pandemic that the freedom of assembly is something that may have to have adjustment in order for public safety to be carried out. And what that tells us about the public is that they understand their roles and their responsibilities to each other in community, as well as understanding the importance of their individual rights in context to that community.
Thank you, Judy. We have also concern worldwide about the attempts of amendments of legislation in different jurisdictions that apparently are attacking the attorney-client privilege, and particularly in the area of economic competition, money laundering, and other topics in general. What is the position of the American Bar Association regarding the attorney-client privilege and possible amendments that might threaten that privilege?
Well, the American Bar Association has long stood tall on the attorney-client privilege. We know it is essential to good lawyering. We know it is essential to the delivery of legal services. And we know it is essential in order that those who seek the assistance of lawyers and ultimately justice from the courts are able to do so in a way that promotes promotes ethical conduct in a way that helps those who want to make sure that they are abiding by the law and seeking assistance in order to make sure that they do so. We have stood tall on numerous occasions over the decades in support of the attorney-client privilege, Hector. And I can tell you that in one important way recently, we entered into a dialogue, as we sometimes do as the American Bar Association, with government agencies, in this case to understand what was needed in order to protect the attorney-client privilege from unnecessary searches of attorney laptops and cell phones as attorneys cross the borders of our country in order to protect them from certain forensic searches. We also are working right now actively to support a piece of legislation that's in the halls of Congress in the United States to make sure that in this digital era, that lawyers are able to communicate with their clients who are incarcerated in a way that there's no interference or listening or reading of those communications by those who are keeping them incarcerated, by the prisons and other officials who are in fact in the correction system in maintaining the incarceration. We have to understand in our country that in order for there to be liberty, there has to be justice. And in order for there to be justice, lawyers need to be able to work within the bounds of their ethics and competency, and also with the aid of the attorney-client privilege. And part of this legislation that we are supporting is to make sure that happens so that those who have been accused of crimes, as well as those who are pursuing appeals, are able to communicate with their attorneys in a way that is absolutely assuring that confidence and that their work product as well will be protected.
Thank you, Judy. After North American Free Trade Agreement, Mexico, the United States, and Canada have executed a new agreement, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, that will substitute NAFTA. In that sense, the three countries have been very active, and there is a lot of interaction of lawyers of the three countries. So for those lawyers licensed in Mexico that might be wondering if they can be members of the American Bar Association, I would like to ask you, is it possible for lawyers licensed in Mexico to become part of the American Bar Association?
Yes, we actually have a special category for lawyers from Mexico and other countries who are licensed in their country to be a part of the American Bar Association. I am so proud to tell you that I have sat not only with Hector in our respective roles as presidents of bar associations, but also sat down and shared bread with lawyers from Mexico just this past year at an antitrust section meeting of the American Bar Association. And so there are many lawyers who engage in the ABA at various levels of volunteerism and leadership and otherwise. And it is that richness that lawyers from outside this country bring that is an integral part of the work of the ABA. You can join the ABA, of course, on a dues structure that we've much simplified only last year. And in one of the ways that we simplified is to have categories of only 5 dues on the mainstream US lawyer, but a category of dues for lawyers who are in other countries and practicing there, who are not admitted American in an American jurisdiction. And those lawyers are guided by their years of practice. But to give you, for instance, 10 to 14 years would pay approximately $250 for membership. What that does, though, Hector, is open up to the lawyer an extraordinary array of resources. For instance, we have almost 600 webinars and CLE programs, titles of CLEs, in our CLE library that is now the largest CLE library, we believe, in the world, that are free to all members. And with membership, you also get automatically, with the basic membership, you get access to become a member for no additional charge to the law practice division of the American Bar Association, as well as to the general and solo practice division. And then you can go on and join other sections of the ABA for a nominal cost. But what we also know is that it is the extraordinary opportunities when we work with our collaborating partners of other bar associations, like the American Bar Association section on energy and environmental law and resources did just this past year, and collaborating with bar associations in Mexico. When I was able to travel to Mexico City to be a part of that meeting and I had the opportunity to meet several of you, as well as to meet Hector, and know that the commonality of purpose there is what brings us together in order to better understand the laws that we all work with as within our frameworks, to understand best practices that we can share, as well as learn from each other about, and to continue a dialogue on critical issues that are at the base and foundation of the rule of law in each of our countries and our shared common goals.
Thank you, Judy. I'm very glad, and I would love to encourage all members of the Mexican Bar Association to consider the possibility of interacting more with the American Bar Association. It is our natural market. They are northern neighbors, so we have a lot of common things, and I'm sure it will encourage membership of Mexican Bar Association to interact more aggressively. So I'd be glad to attend with strong delegations from Mexico on different events of the American Bar Association once the pandemic is over. But I would also extend an invitation, Judy, to you and all members of American Bar Association also to come to Mexico and interact on the activities of the Mexican Bar Association, not only for academic purposes, but also with a professional interest. I think we can encourage our memberships to do that and for the benefit of all of us. What do you think?
Well, I will tell you, Hector, that my experience in the ABA, and I've been involved for almost 40 years. My experience has been that not only is it a place where we go to be better lawyers, it is actually a place where we go to learn to be better people. And that opportunity to better ourselves comes in great part from our exposure to different views, from our greater understanding of what we have in common as people across this globe, and also understanding the challenges that others face. So those exchanges are critically important to our betterment as a legal profession globally, and they're critically important as well to make us better lawyers in our own right.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you very much for your valuable time. I'd like to ask you to send a message or final remarks of this splendid session, please.
Well, you know, it is telling that there are members of the American Bar Association among your ranks, and I thank you each and all for your membership. But what's also telling is that even as we know that, we also know that we each have our own challenges in our own country to address, but that these communications are critically important to helping each of us respectively, as well as helping us lift all boats, as we say in the United States, for the greater humanity. And so I know that our colleagues in Mexico, as well as colleagues around the world, who share a common purpose, who understand the role of lawyers in our civil society, and who most importantly strive each day to serve the public, as we all took an oath to do, are ones that we know can do better together. So thank you all so much for affording me some time to spend with you and Hector. Know importantly that the American Bar Association's work, whether it be in the ways I've described here for you, or our work in the Rule of Law initiative that we've had in its 30th year this year, Hector, including work in Mexico for the Rule of Law, and also our work through our Center for Human Rights across the world, is something that we are most proud of and look forward to our continued work in that regard in the days and months and years ahead, whether in person or virtually as we've done here today. Thank you very much.
Judy Perry, President of the American Bar Association, thank you very much for the honor of your presence in this virtual session. I want to thank you for that, and I also want to thank all of the audience that is watching this session worldwide. And again, thank you very much, and please be safe. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you to all.
Well, thank you, Hector, for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.